I haven't touched a man in 6 months, the Black Widow whispers to the virgin rancher as she draws trembling lines in the desert dirt, her voice carrying both desperate longing and paralyzing fear. The frontier town sees her as death incarnate. 3 husbands buried, each man who dared love her found mysteriously dead within months. They spit when she passes, cross themselves, whisper that any fool who gets close will join her collection of corpses in the cemetery. The shy rancher watches from his failing homestead as this feared woman camps alone by his creek, drinking from the same water that keeps his dying cattle alive. But what the town doesn't know could destroy them both. She's hiding a fortune that powerful men kill for, and he's the only soul innocent enough to trust, or naive enough to die trying. Will the virgin rancher become her salvation, or her fourth victim? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The stagecoach rolled into dusty trails with a cloud of desert dust and the weight of whispered fears. Evelyn Thornton stepped down in her black morning dress, the fabric clinging to her in the Arizona heat. The driver wouldn't meet her eyes as he tossed her single carpetbag to the ground. Word traveled faster than tumbleweeds in frontier towns. Within minutes, every soul on Main Street knew the Black Widow had arrived. 3 husbands, 3 graves, 3 mysterious deaths that followed her like shadows across 2 territories. The hotel clerk took one look at her and suddenly remembered his rooms were all occupied. The boarding house owner claimed she had no space for single women. Even the saloon girls crossed themselves when she walked past their establishment. Sheriff Henry McCallum stepped into her path outside the general store. His hand rested on his gun belt, more from habit than threat. "Ma'am, I'm going to speak plain. This town's got enough troubles without adding your particular brand of misfortune." Evelyn's dark eyes held his gaze without flinching. "I need supplies and a place to rest, Sheriff, nothing more. And every man who's given you those things has ended up 6 feet under." McCallum spat into the dirt. "You'd best move along before sunset." But sunset came and went. Evelyn made camp by the creek that ran behind the last ranch outside town limits. She had nowhere else to go and no money for another stagecoach ticket. The ranch house sat quiet in the distance, smoke curling from its chimney. A single man worked the struggling property, his cattle thin and his fences in need of repair. Josiah Cole had inherited the land from his father 2 years prior and fought every day to keep it running. The townspeople called him the virgin rancher behind his back. At 28, he'd never courted a woman or shown interest in the saloon girls. He blushed when Martha Elliott, the school teacher, spoke to him at church. He stammered when the general store owner's daughter asked about his cattle. The town bullies found endless entertainment in his gentle manner and soft-spoken ways. That boy wouldn't know what to do with a woman if she tied herself up with a ribbon, they'd laugh over their whiskey. Martha Elliott defended him when she could. "Josiah's a good man with a kind heart. Some woman will be lucky to have him." But even Martha saw him as harmless. Sweet, but helpless against the harsh realities of frontier life. Josiah discovered the signs of his uninvited guest on his second morning of checking the cattle. Small footprints by the water's edge. A piece of torn black fabric caught on a mesquite bush. The remains of a small fire carefully extinguished. He knew who it had to be. The whole territory buzzed with stories of the Black Widow's arrival and subsequent rejection from town. Most men would have ridden to the sheriff immediately. Instead, Josiah left a bundle of jerky and hardtack by the creek the next morning. He added a clean blanket the following day. The food always disappeared by evening. The blanket returned washed and folded. This silent exchange continued for a week before their paths finally crossed at dawn. Josiah approached the creek to water his horse and found her there, sitting on a fallen log with her boots off, soaking her feet in the cool stream. She looked up at his approach but didn't flee. Her face showed exhaustion more than fear. "You've been leaving the food," she said. Not a question. Josiah nodded, dismounting but keeping his distance. Seemed like the Christian thing to do. Most Christians in your town wouldn't agree. Most Christians in town haven't read their Bibles lately. This drew the first smile he'd seen from her. Small, but genuine. "I'm Evelyn Thornton. Josiah Cole. This is my land, but you're welcome to the water. She studied his face for signs of recognition, fear, or calculation. She found only quiet kindness and bone-deep loneliness that matched her own. You know what they say about me. I know what they say. Don't know if it's true. Evelyn looked down at her hands, pale against her dark dress. I haven't touched a man in 6 months. Haven't dared to get close to anyone since my last husband died. The words hung in the morning air between them. Josiah heard the pain beneath her confession, the isolation that had driven her to this desperate solitude. That sounds like a lonely way to live. Lonely's better than dead. She pulled her feet from the water and reached for her boots. I should go. You don't want the town thinking you're consorting with the Black Widow. But Josiah didn't move to leave. What if the town's wrong about you? Evelyn's hands stilled on her bootlaces. In her dark eyes, he saw something that looked dangerously close to hope. What neither of them knew was that her arrival had already set events in motion. Telegraph wires carried news across the territory, reaching men who had been waiting months for word of her whereabouts. Men with legal documents, financial interests, and plans that required the Black Widow to remain exactly what the world believed her to be. The question hung unspoken between them by the creek. Would Josiah Cole become her salvation, or would his kindness make him the fourth man to die in her shadow? Their dawn meetings became routine. Evelyn would arrive at the creek as the sun painted the desert gold. Josiah would water his horse and share coffee from his thermos. They spoke little but found comfort in the shared silence. Within 2 weeks, something changed at the Cole Ranch. Josiah's cattle, previously thin and struggling, began to thrive. His fences appeared mysteriously repaired each morning. Someone had reorganized his feed storage for maximum efficiency. His debts to the general store vanished overnight, paid by an anonymous benefactor. The town took notice. That boy's luck turned mighty fast, muttered the bank president over his morning shave. Too fast, agreed the barber. Makes a man wonder what kind of deal he struck. Martha Elliott noticed the changes too. She visited Josiah under the pretense of buying eggs for the school. His chickens now laid twice their usual number. His vegetable garden flourished despite the drought. Josiah, your farm looks wonderful. How did you manage such improvements? He shrugged, color rising in his cheeks. Just been working harder, I guess. But Martha had taught children long enough to recognize a half-truth. Her curiosity deepened when she spotted fresh hoof prints by his creek. Small boots. A woman's prints. Meanwhile, Evelyn applied skills learned from 3 marriages to powerful men. She knew cattle management from her time in Texas. She understood irrigation from her Colorado mining days. Her business sense had been sharpened by watching men underestimate her intelligence. Her first husband had owned the largest ranch in 2 counties. Her second controlled water rights across Arizona territory. Her third had built a mining empire in the mountains. Each had died before teaching her their full operations, but she'd absorbed enough to help one struggling rancher succeed. She worked in darkness, careful never to be seen. Her genuine affection for Josiah's gentle nature drove her to give freely of knowledge she'd paid for with grief. Josiah suspected her involvement but said nothing. He began leaving tools where she could find them. He stocked extra supplies in his barn. He made sure the coffee pot stayed warm for their morning meetings. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. "Why did you marry 3 times?" he asked one morning, genuine curiosity replacing any judgment. Evelyn stared into the creek. Loneliness. Hope. The belief that maybe this time would be different. Different how? That someone would see me as more than what I could provide them. Josiah understood that feeling. The town saw him as entertainment, a simple boy playing at being a man. Nobody looked deeper to find the intelligence he kept hidden, or the strength he'd inherited from frontier living. What happened to them? Your husbands? This question she'd dreaded, but Josiah's steady presence made truth feel possible. People think I killed them. She met his eyes directly. I didn't. but something about me draws death like a magnet. Every man who gets close to me ends up in the ground within months. Maybe it wasn't about you at all." The suggestion stopped her cold. In 2 years of grief and guilt, nobody had ever suggested her innocence so simply. 3 weeks into their secret friendship, Evelyn made a decision that would change everything. She arrived at dawn carrying a leather satchel instead of her usual meager belongings. Her hands shook as she set it between them by the creek. "I need to tell you something about who I really am." Josiah waited, sensing the magnitude of whatever revelation was coming. "I'm not poor. I'm not helpless. I own gold mine claims worth more than this entire town." She opened the satchel to reveal legal documents, banknotes, and property deeds. "I inherited everything from my 3 husbands. Every acre, every claim, every dollar." Josiah studied the papers with growing amazement. The amounts staggered him. "Then why live like this? Why camp by my creek and accept charity?" "Because powerful men killed my husbands to get to this wealth. They're still out there, waiting for the next fool to marry me so they can eliminate him and claim everything through forged legal documents." The pieces clicked into place for Josiah. 3 mysterious deaths, 3 convenient accidents. 3 widows left holding fortunes that attracted the wrong kind of attention. "You've been hiding to protect yourself. And anyone stupid enough to care about me." Her voice broke slightly. "That's why I can't let myself get close to people. That's why I haven't touched another human being in 6 months. Everyone who matters to me dies." Josiah reached slowly across the space between them. His calloused hand covered hers on the satchel. "Maybe you've just been trusting the wrong people." The contact sent electricity through both of them. Months of careful distance collapsed in that single touch. Evelyn felt tears she'd held back for too long. "You don't understand the danger. I understand that you've been carrying this alone." His grip tightened gently. "I understand that someone's been making my ranch successful while asking nothing in return. I understand that you could buy and sell this entire territory, but you'd rather help one struggling rancher than live like a queen. Josiah, if they find out about us, they'll kill you. Then we'll have to make sure they don't find out." For the first time in 6 months, Evelyn allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone worth the risk. What neither realized was that their secret had already been discovered. Martha Elliott watched from the ridge above, having followed the mysterious hoofprints to their source. Her teacher's instincts told her this was more than a simple romance. Something much larger was at play, and Josiah Cole was walking into danger he couldn't possibly imagine. Martha Elliott's discovery changed everything. She confronted Josiah the next morning at his front door, her schoolteacher's stern expression brooking no argument. "I saw you with her, by the creek." Josiah's face went pale, but he didn't deny it. "Martha, it's not what you think. I think you're courting death itself." She pushed past him into his kitchen, noting the improved furnishings and well-stocked pantries. "And I think she's been the source of your sudden good fortune." The truth hung between them. Martha's sharp eyes missed nothing in a classroom, and she'd applied that same attention to the mystery of Josiah's transformation. "She's not what people say. 3 dead husbands suggest otherwise." Before Josiah could respond, hoofbeats thundered up his drive. Sheriff McCallum dismounted with unusual urgency, his face grim. "Cole, we got a problem. Railroad men rode into town this morning asking questions about you and the Black Widow." Clayton Morse and Judge Whitman had arrived on the morning train with an entourage of lawyers and armed security. They took rooms at the hotel Evelyn had been denied, immediately establishing themselves as men of importance and influence. Morse owned 3 railroad lines and enough political connections to reshape territorial law. Judge Whitman carried the legal authority to validate property transfers and marriage certificates. Together, they'd perfected a system of acquiring wealth through calculated marriages and convenient deaths. They'd been tracking Evelyn across 2 territories, waiting for her to surface with a new romantic interest. Josiah Cole represented their easiest target yet. A simple rancher with no political connections and a reputation for naivety. Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. Force a quick marriage through legal pressure, eliminate the husband through an accident within weeks, claim the inheritance through forged documents that Judge Whitman would validate himself. They'd executed this scheme 3 times already. Sheriff McCallum delivered their ultimatum to Josiah personally. They're claiming she's mentally unstable from grief. Say she needs a legal guardian to protect her assets. They got paperwork demanding she submit to a competency hearing. Can they do that? Judge Whitman's signature makes it legal. She either appears in court tomorrow or gets arrested for contempt. The trap was closing. Evelyn would have to emerge from hiding, making herself vulnerable to their manipulation. Once in their custody, they could force any arrangement they chose. Josiah found Evelyn at their usual meeting spot that evening. Her face showed she'd already heard about the railroad men. "I have to run again." "Where?" "They'll follow you anywhere." Then I keep running until they lose interest or find easier prey. But Josiah had spent sleepless hours considering their options. His gentle demeanor masked a strategic mind sharpened by years of managing a failing ranch against impossible odds. What if we give them what they want, but on our terms? Marriage? Evelyn's voice carried equal parts hope and terror. A public engagement. Let them think their plan is working while we gather evidence of their real intentions. The risk was enormous. Every day they delayed increased the danger to Josiah's life. But running would only postpone the inevitable. These men had the resources to hunt Evelyn across the entire frontier. Their conversation was interrupted by Martha Elliott emerging from the darkness. Both jumped, but the schoolteacher raised her hands peacefully. "I've been researching your railroad friends. Judge Whitman's been signing a lot of death certificates lately. Always young men, always married to wealthy widows." She carried a leather portfolio filled with newspaper clippings and court records. Her methodical teacher's mind had connected patterns that others missed. 3 territories, 15 suspicious deaths, all husbands of women with significant inheritances. The evidence was damning, but gathering it had been dangerous. Martha had used her connections with other teachers and government clerks to access records that should have been confidential. "They killed my husbands." Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "And they're planning to kill Josiah the moment you marry him." The next morning brought the first attempt on Josiah's life. He was repairing fence posts when his horse suddenly bolted. The animal had been calm moments before, but now reared and kicked with wild terror. Josiah barely rolled clear as iron-shod hooves struck where his head had been. He found the source quickly. Someone had applied a chemical irritant to his saddle blanket. The substance burned the horse's skin, driving the normally gentle animal into a frenzy. The second attempt came that afternoon. A section of his barn roof collapsed as he stored hay beneath it. Rotten support beams gave way with suspicious timing, sending heavy wooden planks crashing down. He escaped with bruises, but the message was clear. Marry quickly, or accidents would continue until one succeeded. Evelyn recognized the pattern immediately. Her first husband had suffered a riding accident. Her second had been crushed by mining equipment. Her third fell from a hotel balcony during their honeymoon. They're escalating faster than before. Martha's investigation had revealed why. Judge Whitman received a telegram yesterday. Federal marshals are investigating territorial court irregularities. They're running out of time to complete their scheme. The walls were closing in from multiple directions. The conspirators needed to finish their business before outside law enforcement arrived. Evelyn had to choose between Josiah's immediate safety and his long-term survival. Running might save him today, but would leave the killers free to try again. Standing and fighting offered the only chance to end the threat permanently. She made her decision at sunset, standing by the creek where their relationship had begun. "We announce our engagement tomorrow. Let them think they've won. And then? Then we prove who they really are before they can kill you too." The greatest gamble of their lives would begin with the most dangerous lie they'd ever told. Love had brought them together, but only courage would keep them alive. The engagement announcement sent shockwaves through dusty trails. Josiah Cole, the virgin rancher, would marry the Black Widow within the week. The news spread faster than wildfire, carrying equal measures of disbelief and morbid fascination. Clayton Morse received the telegram with obvious satisfaction. Judge Whitman immediately began preparing marriage documents and property transfer papers. Their carefully laid trap was working perfectly. What they didn't expect was Martha Elliott's nighttime visit to the telegraph office. She'd spent 3 days crafting coded messages to teacher friends across the territory. Her network of educators had access to court records, newspaper archives, and government correspondence that others couldn't reach. The responses painted a damning picture of systematic murder disguised as legal proceedings. But Martha's most important discovery came from an unlikely source. While researching Judge Whitman's previous cases, she found a death certificate for Thomas Brennan, Evelyn's first husband. The document showed irregularities that caught her trained eye for detail: wrong date format, inconsistent handwriting, a medical examiner's signature that didn't match other documents from the same office. Thomas Brennan's death had been faked. She confronted this revelation at dawn, finding Evelyn and Josiah by their creek hideaway. The news hit like a physical blow. Thomas is alive. Martha spread the evidence across a fallen log. Someone helped him disappear. The death certificate was forged, but not by the same people trying to kill you now. This was done to protect him. Evelyn stared at the papers with shaking hands. Her first husband, the man she'd mourned for 2 years, had abandoned her to face the consequences alone. Why? Why let me believe he was dead? Maybe he didn't have a choice. The answer came at sunset in the form of federal marshals riding into town. 3 men wearing official badges and carrying warrants for Clayton Morse and Judge Whitman. Leading them was a figure that made Evelyn's world tilt sideways. Thomas Brennan, very much alive, dismounted outside the sheriff's office. He looked older, weathered by months of hiding. His face showed the strain of watching his wife from a distance while being unable to protect her. When he saw Evelyn standing frozen on the boardwalk, his composure cracked. Evie. The pet name he'd called her during their brief marriage hung in the desert air. Around them, townspeople gathered to witness this impossible resurrection. You let me think you were dead. Her voice carried 2 years of grief and betrayal. I had no choice. They would have killed us both. Thomas explained everything in the sheriff's office while Martha and Josiah listened with growing amazement. He'd discovered the conspiracy by accident, finding correspondence between Morse and corrupt territorial officials. His investigation had uncovered a network of frauds spanning multiple states. But when he tried to expose them, they'd turned the tables. Threatened to frame him for embezzlement. Promised to kill Evelyn if he didn't disappear permanently. Faking my death was the only way to protect you while I gathered evidence. Protect me? Evelyn's anger finally boiled over. I've spent 2 years running from killers who murdered 2 more husbands while you played dead. I've been working with federal marshals to build an airtight case. Every day I stayed hidden was another day collecting proof of their crimes. The lead marshal confirmed Thomas's story. Mr. Brennan's been our primary witness for 18 months. His testimony will put Morse and Whitman away permanently. But Josiah saw the flaw in their plan immediately. What about the people they've already killed? The other husbands? Justice for the dead, protection for the living. The moral victory felt hollow against the weight of lives lost. Evelyn struggled with conflicting emotions, relief that Thomas had survived, rage that he'd let her suffer alone, confusion about what his resurrection meant for her feelings toward Josiah. The personal crisis deepened when Thomas revealed the final truth. Our marriage was already over before I disappeared. We'd signed divorce papers the week before my supposed death. I just never filed them officially. Why? Because I hoped we might find our way back to each other someday. Evelyn stared at the man she'd once loved, trying to reconcile him with the stranger who'd let her believe herself cursed. Their marriage had been troubled from the start. Different goals, incompatible dreams, constant arguments about money and future plans. His disappearance had preserved her memory of their best moments while erasing the painful reality of their failing relationship. The divorce papers are legal. You're free to make your own choices. But freedom felt overwhelming after months of believing herself trapped by fate. She looked between Thomas, representing her past, and Josiah, offering an uncertain future. The marshals needed her testimony to complete their case against Morse and Whitman. The engagement to Josiah had to continue as cover until they could arrest the conspirators safely. How long? 2 days. We're planning to take them during the harvest festival when the whole town's gathered. Maximum witnesses, minimum chance of escape. Martha Elliott volunteered to coordinate the local elements of their plan. Her teaching position gave her access to community leaders and festival organizers. She could ensure the right people were in position when the arrests happened. The next 48 hours would determine everything. Evelyn's freedom, Josiah's safety, and justice for the murdered husbands all hung in the balance. As the group dispersed to prepare, Evelyn found herself alone with 2 men who'd shaped her destiny in different ways. Thomas, whose protective deception had nearly destroyed her. Josiah, whose genuine courage might yet save them both. The choice between past and future would have to wait until the immediate danger passed. But deep in her heart, she already knew which path called to her. The Harvest Festival transformed dusty trails into a celebration of survival and community. Colorful banners stretched between buildings. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by every family. Children ran between stalls while musicians tuned their instruments for the evening dance. Beneath the festivities, tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Federal marshals positioned themselves throughout the crowd, disguised as traveling merchants and cattle buyers. Martha Elliott coordinated with festival organizers, ensuring maximum witnesses would be present during the planned confrontation. Evelyn wore her finest dress, a deep blue that matched the desert sky. The engagement ring Josiah had given her caught the afternoon sunlight. To outside observers, she appeared to be a blushing bride-to-be celebrating with her intended. Only those closest could see the fear in her eyes. Clayton Morse and Judge Whitman held court near the main platform, accepting congratulations on their role in arranging the match. They'd spread word that their legal intervention had protected the mentally unstable widow, ensuring her proper care through marriage to a suitable husband. The crowd bought their story completely. Such a blessing that girl found guidance. Elderly Mrs. Peterson nodded approvingly. Left to herself, she might have made terrible choices. Morse basked in the community's gratitude while calculating timeline and logistics. The marriage ceremony would occur at sunset, followed by the traditional feast. Young Josiah Cole would suffer an unfortunate accident within the week, leaving his grieving widow in need of legal protection once again. Their final scheme would net them the largest fortune yet. Martha Elliott watched from the schoolhouse steps, her teacher's eye tracking every suspicious movement. She'd spent the morning ensuring key community leaders were positioned perfectly. The banker, the newspaper editor, and the territorial representative all had clear views of the main platform. When the marshals made their arrests, half the territory's leadership would witness the dramatic revelation. As sunset approached, Judge Whitman called for attention. The crowd gathered around the makeshift altar, eager to witness the union of the virgin rancher and the Black Widow. Dearly beloved, we gather here to join these 2 souls in holy matrimony. Evelyn's hands trembled as she took Josiah's arm. This close to the trap's completion, every instinct screamed danger. Her previous husbands had died within days of similar ceremonies. But Josiah squeezed her fingers gently, his steady presence grounding her fear. The ceremony proceeded normally until the moment for exchanging vows. Judge Whitman produced a special goblet, claiming it was a territorial tradition for the groom to drink from blessed wine. The liquid swirled dark red in the crystal glass. Josiah reached for the goblet as planned, but his hand froze halfway. Something in the judge's eager expression triggered the survival instincts he'd developed from years of frontier living. This was the moment. The poison that would make him husband number 4. Instead of drinking, Josiah raised the goblet high above his head. To my beautiful bride and all those who came before. He poured the wine onto the ground at Whitman's feet. The judge's face went white with shock and rage. Morse stepped forward, his mask of civility slipping. That wine was blessed specifically for this ceremony. You must drink from the replacement. I don't think so. Thomas Brennan's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. He stepped into the circle of witnesses, very much alive and carrying federal marshal credentials. Gasps rippled through the assembled townspeople. Evelyn's first husband, supposedly dead for 2 years, stood before them in official capacity. Clayton Morse and Judge Whitman, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and murder. The marshals moved in perfect coordination, surrounding the two men before they could react. But Morse had spent years preparing for potential exposure. He drew a hidden pistol from his coat, pressing the barrel against Evelyn's temple as she stood frozen at the altar. One more step, and the widow joins her husband's permanently. The festival crowd screamed and scattered, children crying as parents pulled them to safety. The carefully planned arrest had become a deadly standoff. Judge Whitman pulled his own weapon, backing toward the horses they'd kept saddled for quick departure. Their escape route led through the desert, where pursuit would be difficult in darkness. She's coming with us. Insurance against federal interference. But they'd underestimated the quiet rancher everyone dismissed as harmless. Josiah moved faster than anyone expected, his ranch work having built deceptive strength and reflexes. He knocked Morse's gun arm aside while pulling Evelyn to safety behind the altar. The pistol discharged harmlessly into the air. Marshals swarmed both conspirators before they could recover. Whitman's weapon clattered to the wooden platform as steel handcuffs clicked into place. The crowd slowly emerged from hiding, their festival joy replaced by stunned amazement. The Black Widow's curse had been revealed as calculated murder. Their simple rancher had shown unexpected courage in the moment of crisis. Martha Elliott stepped onto the platform, her teacher's voice carrying clearly across the gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed the exposure of a conspiracy that spans 3 territories. These men killed innocent husbands to steal their wives' fortunes. Evelyn Thornton is a victim, not a curse. The lead marshal addressed the crowd directly, ensuring the truth would spread as far as the original lies. Mrs. Thornton's marriages were targeted by criminals who saw her inheritance as easy money. Every mysterious death was murder disguised as accident. Evelyn found her voice for the first time since Thomas's revelation. I'm not cursed. I'm not dangerous. I'm just a woman who loved unwisely and paid the price. The community's transformation was immediate and profound. Shame replaced suspicion. Sympathy overcame superstition. Sheriff McCallum formally apologized for his treatment. Hotel owners offered free rooms. Even the children who'd crossed themselves in her presence approached with shy curiosity instead of fear. As Morse and Whitman were loaded into a prison wagon, the Harvest Festival resumed with genuine celebration. Justice had been served, truth had triumphed, and their community had learned the cost of prejudice. But personal questions remained unanswered as 3 figures stood together in the gathering darkness, their futures uncertain despite the victory over their enemies. The prison wagon disappeared into the desert night, carrying Clayton Morse and Judge Whitman toward territorial justice. Their conspiracy had crumbled, but the personal wreckage remained to be sorted through. Evelyn stood between 2 men who'd shaped her destiny in vastly different ways. Thomas represented her complicated past, full of deception disguised as protection. Josiah offered an uncertain future built on genuine truth and courage. The choice should have been obvious, but grief and betrayal clouded her judgment. Thomas approached first, his federal marshal badge catching the festival lantern's glow. Evie, I know you're angry. I know my methods caused you pain, but everything I did was to protect you. By letting me believe I was cursed, by watching me suffer alone for 2 years, by gathering the evidence needed to destroy the men who killed your other husbands. His logic was sound but cold. Thomas had always prioritized practical solutions over emotional needs. Their marriage had failed partly because of this exact tendency to make unilateral decisions for her supposed benefit. Josiah remained silent, understanding that this conversation would determine his own fate. He'd fallen in love with a woman who might not be free to love him back. The lead marshal approached with official documents requiring signatures. Thomas's testimony needed corroboration from Evelyn about the threats and intimidation she'd experienced. Her statement would ensure the conspirators faced maximum punishment. As she signed the papers, Thomas revealed his final truth. The divorce documents I mentioned? They're already filed. Have been for 2 years. I made sure you were legally free before I disappeared. Evelyn's pen froze above the signature line. What? Our marriage was dissolved the day before my supposed death. Everything you've done since then, every choice you've made, has been as a free woman. The revelation hit harder than his resurrection had. Thomas had protected her legal status even while abandoning her emotionally. She'd spent months believing herself trapped by marital obligations that didn't exist. You could have told me. I wanted you to choose freely, without feeling pressured by legal technicalities. But his noble intentions had caused unnecessary suffering. Evelyn had denied herself happiness with Josiah partly because she'd believed herself still bound to a dead husband. Martha Elliott approached as the official proceedings concluded, her teacher's wisdom cutting through the emotional complexity. The question isn't what Thomas intended or what you believed. The question is what you want now. Evelyn looked at Josiah, seeing the quiet strength that had saved her life and the gentle kindness that had healed her broken spirit. He'd risked everything for her without asking for anything in return. Then she looked at Thomas, recognizing the man she'd once loved, but could no longer trust. His protective deception had nearly destroyed her ability to believe in love itself. Thomas, what you did took courage, but it also took away my right to choose my own risks. I was trying to save your life by making decisions about my life without me. She stepped closer to Josiah, her choice becoming clear. I can't build a future with someone who thinks protecting me means lying to me. Thomas's face showed the pain of losing her permanently, but also acceptance. He'd gambled on winning her back and lost to a better man. I understand. For what it's worth, Josiah Cole is exactly the kind of husband you deserve. The festival continued around them, but the three central figures had reached their resolution. Thomas would return to his martial duties, carrying the satisfaction of justice served and the regret of love lost through his own choices. 6 months later, Dusty Trails prepared for its second attempt at a wedding between the former Black Widow and the no longer virgin rancher. Evelyn's transformation had been remarkable. Using her inherited wealth wisely, she'd established a school with Martha Elliott and funded community improvements that benefited everyone. The woman once feared as a harbinger of death had become the town's most beloved benefactor. The locals now called her the Golden Angel. Josiah had grown from the timid rancher into a confident community leader. His ranch thrived under Evelyn's business guidance, but his courage during the festival confrontation had earned him respect that transcended his agricultural success. Martha Elliott had been appointed Justice of the Peace, making her the perfect choice to officiate their ceremony. She'd played Cupid, detective, and protector throughout their courtship. The wedding took place at sunset, with the entire community in attendance. No mysterious goblets or suspicious wine appeared. No federal marshals lurked in disguise. Only genuine celebration and joy filled the desert air. As Martha pronounced them husband and wife, Evelyn felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd carried for 3 years. The curse was broken not by magic, but by finding someone brave enough to see past fear to the woman beneath. Their first kiss as a married couple drew cheers from the assembled crowd. Children who'd once crossed themselves in her presence now threw flower petals at the happy couple. During the reception dance, Evelyn spoke the words that had started their entire journey. I haven't been truly free to touch a man's heart in 6 months, until now. Josiah spun her around the makeshift dance floor, both of them laughing with pure happiness. Around them, their community celebrated not just a wedding, but the triumph of truth over prejudice and love over fear. The desert sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson as the former Black Widow and Virgin Rancher began their new life together. They'd found in each other the courage to defy expectations, the strength to face danger together, and the wisdom to choose love over fear. Their story would be told for generations in Dusty Trails, a reminder that sometimes the greatest curses are the ones we place on ourselves, and the greatest magic is simply having the courage to reach for happiness.